Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a stack of source material that is, well, it's frankly everywhere online right now.
It really is.
It's compelling, it's
No.
very emotionally intense, and it uses this incredibly powerful symbolic language. We're talking about books, signatures, energy frequencies, reincarnation.
All the big ones.
Right. It promises you this, true spiritual knowledge, but at the same time, it paints a deeply confusing picture of reality.
It does. And the mission today is, I think, really crucial. We're taking these viral high-concept claims, and we're going to subject them to what we're calling a coherence correction.
A coherence correction, I like that.
We want to separate the genuine, empowering wisdom from interpretations that, whether they mean to or not, just lead to a lot of confusion, or worse, emotional alienation.
So we're basically drawing a line in the sand between, say, poetry and physics.
Exactly. Meaning versus manipulation.
Because look, symbolism is a beautiful tool for understanding the world. But if you mistake the map for the territory, if you start to believe the metaphor is the actual operating system of the universe,
You end up completely lost.
yeah,
And we want to show you exactly where that happens, that subtle but really dangerous transition where a beautiful metaphor slips into becoming a mechanism. It traps you in a narrative where you feel like you have no real power.
And some of the claims we're going to unpack are, they're hugely charged. We're going to look at this central idea that reality is just a book, secretly controlled by these unseen authors.
And the big one.
And the one that I think hits the hardest, the claim that your family members were once your enemies from a past life, and they've only been reincarnated into your bloodline to, test you and drain you.
And that's the ultimate tease, isn't it? Because it gives you this very tidy explanation for very real pain.
It does.
So if we're going to provide clarity, we need to understand the trade-off here. Why does a spiritual idea that offers comfort also seem to, simultaneously strip you of your personal agency? Let's dive into that script.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start with the core analogy that really holds this whole philosophy together.
The foundation.
The idea that life is a controlled script. The source material argues we're just characters who are given and I'm quoting here, a stage name, or I should say a government name.
Implying we're definitely not the authors of this reality.
Not at all.
And you can see why that's appealing, right? It suggests that all the chaos we see in the world is, underneath it all, part of some grand structured design. It gives the universe high production value.
And they try to use the physical structure of a book as, tangible proof.
Right, the spine.
The spine. They point out a book has a spine to keep the pages in order, and we have a spine. Therefore,
Therefore, our reality must mirror that book structure.
Yeah.
And the story, it only moves forward.
Once someone turned the page. That's the quote.
And this framework then gets applied to everything. Your closest relationships. Your mother is a chapter. Your dad is a chapter.
Your sister's a chapter.
And this resonates with people because we're hardwired to process time and conflict through stories, through narrative. When our lives feel difficult, the idea that someone else is writing the script offers a kind of strange relief.
Yeah, it's not your fault.
It's not your fault, it's just the plot.
So if we apply our coherence correction here, I have to ask, isn't that a useful way to think about things sometimes? Why is trade of your agency for that kind of comfort necessarily a bad bargain?
It's useful, absolutely, until you believe the metaphor is the mechanism, and that's the slip. The critique is actually really simple. Symbolism is not evidence, and poetry is not physics. Stories, 100%, they help us frame struggle and growth, but the coherent slip happens when we mistake the analogy for the literal truth.
So when you say mechanism, you mean it's not just a way to think about life, but it's the actual measurable operating system of the universe.
Exactly. Just because we use terms like chapter or story arc to describe things that happen doesn't mean reality is literally a leather-bound book controlled by some external author.
And if you internalize that idea, that you're only a character,
you stop behaving like an agent with free will. You just wait. You wait for someone else to turn the page instead of deciding which paragraph you're going to write next.
And that, I imagine, leads to a profound sense of helplessness. If the spine of the book is real, then the narrative is completely binding.
It's a philosophical trap. When things go wrong, you don't look at your choices. You just blame the author.
And when things go right,
You credit the plot, not your own effort. The comparison is useful for thinking about life's structure, sure, but when it becomes your definition of reality, you stop engaging with messy, complex, non-linear existence.
Okay, let's apply a linguistic coherence correction now, because diving deeper, the source material relies so heavily on these linguistic interpretations.
Or maybe we should call them etymological acrobatics.
Yes, that's better. To reveal these so-called secret truths, the claim is that language itself is actually designed to bind us.
And this is where we see what I call wordplay drift. It's incredibly seductive. It feels like you're being let in on a secret that's been hiding in plain sight.
Proving the whole book narrative is real.
Right.
Let's use two specific examples. First, the source claims, and this is a quote, "The true definition of a family is right here, a slave and a servant." And they follow this up by saying that family and the word page have the same definition. They're connecting these etymological leaps to prove there's a hidden structure of control.
Okay, so when meanings slide around like that, when definitions become fluid just based on what sounds dramatic, your conclusions just stop being reliable. You can't discover a truth by changing definitions mid-sentence to imply some sinister secret.
It's a magic trick.
It's linguistic sleight of hand. It creates the feeling of a revelation because you're connecting two ideas that sound kind of similar or maybe share a faint, often misunderstood historical root. But in reality, you've just performed a magic trick on logic.
It's like arguing that because the word curious sounds a little bit like furious,
Yeah.
that all curiosity must be rooted in anger. It doesn't follow.
Precisely. And they apply this wordplay drift to just everyday interactions. They use parental advice as proof of the whole script theory.
The example they use is when parents say, "Baby, sweetheart, don't tell stories."
Right. And the sources interpret this as some kind of encoded admission that life is nothing but a story.
So parents are accidentally confirming a secret cosmic conspiracy just by trying to raise an honest kid.
That leap it skips over logic entirely and lands directly in paranoia. When a parent tells a child, don't tell stories, it means don't lie.
Or don't exaggerate.
Exactly. It's a basic, necessary moral instruction for, social cohesion. It is not an admission that you live in a false, constructed reality controlled by authors.
So why is it so important to counter this? Why does it matter if people think their name is a spiritual shackle?
Because if you truly believe that your name, your identity, or your role in your family is linguistically binding you to some hidden system of slavery, well, you'll never trust your own voice. You won't feel empowered to make your own choices.
You give power to labels.
You grant power to labels that they simply do not possess, and it paralyzes your ability to act. Your name is a social identifier. It's a functional tag. It is not a spiritual chain.
Now we get to the part with, I think, the deepest emotional weight. This is where the coherence correction is probably the most necessary.
For sure.
We have to address the claims about family members being designed specifically to steal your emotional energy.
This narrative needs careful handling because it touches on very real, often profound human pain and conflict that people experience within their families.
And it offers a solution.
It offers a solution that feels like freedom, but it's actually just radical detachment.
The source material ties this pain back to reincarnation. It claims, quote, "If you ain't like someone in your past life, or you hurt someone or they hurt you, they will reincarnate inside of your new bloodline until you conquer the mission."
So your family members are essentially just required characters in a script.
Assigned villains. Needed for the drama, the heartache, the pain, just to make sure the story happens.
And that idea that your closest relationships are just karmic enemies assigned to you by the cosmos, it's a perfect example of emotional alienation disguised as enlightenment.
It gives you a tidy cosmic explanation for why your mother is difficult, or why your sibling causes you pain.
And that tidiness is the whole appeal. When you are suffering in a deep conflict, it's so much easier to blame a secret cosmic contract than to look at decades of complex interactions and behaviors.
Absolutely. The problem is that while it does provide some comfort, by externalizing the problem,
it encourages you to just detach, to label your family member as a karmic trap and feel spiritually superior for it, instead of encouraging communication or boundary setting or any kind of genuine healing.
So what's the grounded reframe for that pain? Because the pain is real no matter what the cause is.
The blunt correction is that families are imperfect because humans are imperfect. They struggle, They create drama, not because the universe assigned them as villains to drain your energy.
But for much more grounded reasons.
So much more grounded, solvable reasons. They inherit trauma from previous generations. They lack basic communication skills. They operate with extremely poor boundaries.
So pain doesn't always equal karma.
Not at all. Pain doesn't always mean cosmic punishment. Sometimes it just means people need healing skills, or emotional literacy, or practical boundary-setting abilities they were never, ever taught.
That's a huge distinction.
It's everything. If you label your family as chapters to escape, you miss the entire opportunity to transform those relationships into something you can understand or set healthy boundaries with, or maybe even eventually heal from.
Inherited trauma versus cosmic punishment. That distinction is crucial.
It is.
Inherited trauma is a problem you can work on with therapy and communication. Cosmic punishment is a problem that requires a whole life philosophy based on fear.
Exactly. When you define the problem as trauma, you gain agency. You can change your reaction. You can demand better boundaries. But when you define the problem as a karmic enemy, you lose all your agency because the universe is controlling the difficulty setting. You're just encouraged to wait until the character exits the script.
So if we're just characters being drained by family, where does our agency really disappear? The source claims it's right here in the concept of binding agreements. We need to talk about signatures and contracts.
And here we go again. We see wordplay tying a very mundane, modern action signing a contract all the way back to the book metaphor to inspire fear.
And paralysis.
And paralysis, yes.
The claims are that signing a contract is basically giving them power, and this is linked physically to the signature. The term signature itself, the sources claim, means a group of folded sheets nested together to be bound in a book.
It's so clever.
And they specifically mentioned the palm of your hand representing your signature, arguing that every time you sign a contract, you've given them your nature path.
Okay, so let's apply the coherence correction to the fear factor here. A signature is, well, it's legal consent. It's represented by ink on paper.
It's a social mechanism.
It's a social mechanism for mutual accountability. It is not destiny. Nor is it a binding spell that can somehow extract your soul essence or your nature path.
But that wordplay about folded sheets and bindings, it sounds so convincing. It seems to perfectly connect the legal world to this spiritual book world.
And that's why it's used. It creates the illusion of some deep, esoteric truth. But let's just look at the sheer impracticality of the claim. If contracts truly stole human essence or power, the entire global economy would have collapsed centuries ago.
Given the billions of documents signed every minute.
Every single minute. We're talking about standard legal bureaucracy here, not spiritual warfare.
That's a powerful visual. Contracts aren't draining your life force. They're agreeing to terms and conditions.
Precisely. This narrative, it consistently creates fear and what we call learned helplessness. It tells you that your power is constantly being siphoned away by all these external things, your name, your family, your signature, which is the complete opposite of genuine empowerment.
And if you look at the pattern
is that every single claim removes your inherent natural agency while pretending to give you the secret knowledge to get it back.
You have to pay the teacher to learn the secret, to regain the power that the teacher just told you was stolen from you.
It's a closed, self-reinforcing loop. It's designed to make you look outward for secrets instead of inward for discipline.
Which brings us to the ultimate promise of these claims, the escape.
The end game.
The sources claim, quote, once you learn how to control your energy frequencies, you can start writing your own story. The final destination is the end of the story, when there are no more pages.
Which is death.
Death, yeah. It offers this vision of being the ultimate author, of transcending the whole system.
And this is where the grounded reframe provides true empowerment, but without all the paranoia that comes with it. It's easy to promise godhood. It's much harder to teach mastery.
So what does healthy empowerment actually look like if it doesn't involve escaping the book?
It looks like maturity. It looks like hard work because it acknowledges the real constraints of reality. Yes, you can absolutely regulate your emotions. You can master your reactions. You can change your behavior to write a better future, which is a form of controlling your energy frequencies, if you want to call it that.
But you're not escaping life.
But no one escapes life by simply believing they're suddenly outside the story. That's wishful thinking that avoids the consequences of reality.
So if life isn't a book written by others, and we aren't just characters, what is the clear, actionable definition of life and power that we can take away from this?
Life is a blend. It's choices plus consequences. It's biology plus your environment. It is trauma plus the growth that's required to overcome it.
And meaning.
And perhaps most importantly, meaning is constructed by you individually based on your values and your actions. It is not imposed on you from some hidden script.
I like that. Meaning is constructed, not imposed.
You mature by realizing you're both the character, the one who experiences the limits, the setbacks, the consequences, and you're also the editor.
The editor.
The one who can influence the next paragraph by applying discipline, setting boundaries, and mastering your behavior. True influence comes from understanding and acting inside reality, not from trying to decode spiritual secret agents or believing you've somehow transcended the physical laws of the universe.
That brings us right back to the core tension of this entire deep dive for you, the listener. The difference between a powerful, relatable metaphor that life feels like a story and a dangerous, literal interpretation that breeds confusion and isolation.
It's such an essential line to draw, because when metaphor replaces reality, confusion starts to feel like enlightenment. It feels profound precisely because it's so mysterious and complex.
But it's not useful.
No. Real functional power comes from clarity, not mystery. Clarity allows you to act.
And as you reflect on this, consider this provocative thought, building on our discussion of family and agency. If facing reality without flinching is the true source of power, just consider how many relationships in your life, relationships you might have previously dismissed as karmic traps or chapters you had to escape, could be completely transformed.
How?
Merely by applying clear, consistent boundaries and actively editing your own behavior. That is where you move from a character waiting for the page to turn to the editor deciding what the next chapter contains. Okay, let's get into this. We've pulled two very distinct sets of source material that have just gone absolutely viral. On the surface, they seem worlds apart. One's about language and, semantics. The other is about cosmic spirituality. But we found they share an identical mechanism.
They really do. We are tackling the claim that common English words like black, kids, and children are actually secret linguistic spells designed to weaken you.
And then the other one.
And then we pivot to something much darker. The claim that the figure of Jesus is a literal demonic entity that's feeding on and recycling human souls in some kind of cosmic trap.
That is a staggering contrast. But the energy around them feels so similar. So what's our mission with this deep dive?
The mission is to give you clarity, to give you the tools for critical thinking. This is not about, defending any institution or mocking anyone's spiritual journey. Not at all. It's about identifying that moment when a legitimate critique, say, of history or power morphs into a kind of fear-based mythology. And, crucially, to show you the same manipulation engine that powers both of these narratives.
So you can spot it in the future.
Exactly. Spot the pattern.
I really appreciate that focus. Okay, let's start with the first one, the weaponization of words. The core idea we're seeing in these sources is that the words themselves, the sounds, the syllables, are the source of oppression.
And right away, we hit a huge red flag. It's something we call etymology abuse.
That's etymology abuse.
Yeah. The people pushing this take real little fragments of language history and then they twist them to support an agenda. It almost always involves what linguists call the false cognate fallacy.
Okay, hold on a sec. What exactly is a false cognate for anyone listening who might not know?
Good question. So a cognate is when two words share a common ancestor, like how the English word father and the Latin word pater both come from the same ancient root. A false cognate is when two words just sound similar, but they have completely different origins, different family trees. And these narratives just thrive on that confusion. They pretend that a similar sound equals a shared, usually sinister, origin.
Let's get specific then. The biggest claim we found was this idea that the word black is a spell. And the assertion is the word black is a spell that means lack or colorless or even white.
That is, you can fact check this. It's just demonstrably false when you look at the actual linguistic records.
So break it down for us.
The English word black comes from the Old English root blek. It means dark, ink-colored, absence of light. It's an ancient Germanic word for darkness.
But the narrative always says the real meaning is hidden in Latin.
Exactly. That's the trick. They jump across language families to create confusion. In Latin, the word for black is niger, or aubaler. The word for white is albus, or candidus. There is zero connection.
So where does the white connection come from?
It's a mix-up, probably an intentional one, between the English word black and the French word blanc, which means white.
Similar sound.
Similar sound, completely different origin. It's a classic false cognate, and it's being used to create this feeling of a conspiracy, a hidden danger.
So even if the linguistics are wrong, Why does this idea get so much traction? Because for a lot of people, these words do feel loaded with negative history.
That's the psychological hook. You're right. People feel the very real pain of systemic oppression, of historical injustice. But the narrative makes this dangerous logical leap.
Which is?
It argues that the word itself, biologically or spiritually, alters your capacity, your love, your intelligence. But language reflects power structures. It doesn't magically drain your potential.
That distinction is everything. Reflection versus causation. Okay, let's look at the next claim. This one is everywhere. Kids means baby goats, so calling children kids makes them act like animals.
Mm-hmm. And again, you have to separate the little bit of truth from the massive misdirection.
Okay, so what's the truth?
The truth is, yes, a kid is a baby goat. English is full of words with multiple meanings. But the term kid for a child has been standard common English since the 16th century. It's just an accepted synonym.
So where's the misdirection?
The misdirection is claiming the word transfers the behavior, that the meaning acts like, I don't know, a kind of behavioral software.
Right.
I mean, think about it logically. If that were true, calling a man a guy, which originally meant a grotesque effigy, by the way, would cause some kind of physical transformation. Calling someone bro doesn't genetically alter them. It's designed to scare you, not inform you.
And then there's the most severe claim of all in this category, the idea that children means cattle.
That is just, it's definitively false. Simple as that. The word child or children comes from Old English child, meaning offspring, a young person.
No connection to livestock.
Zero. None whatsoever. The association between children and cattle is purely invented. It's layered on top of the other claims to heighten that emotional sense of danger, that someone is marking you for slaughter.
It really shows how important it is to just do a quick check on the etymology. But like you said, we have to acknowledge the part that feels true. Language can influence identity. Dehumanizing language has been a tool of oppression.
That's why it's so seductive. That core idea is absolutely true. Narratives shape how we see ourselves. Systems use language to marginalize people. But this is where the dangerous leap happens.
The focus shifts.
The focus shifts entirely from systems to syllables.
Okay, let's really spend some time on that. If the word spell theory is wrong, can you give us a concrete example of how systems actually drain power versus this magical claim?
Absolutely. The real mechanism isn't magical at all. It's a chain reaction. It starts with a dehumanizing narrative. Let's say a narrative that a certain group is less intelligent.
Okay.
That narrative leads to a belief. That belief informs people's behavior. That behavior dictates policy. And that policy creates the oppressive outcome.
What does that policy actually look like in the real world?
Think about something like redlining. Power is lost through economic exclusion. The laws that denied mortgages to entire communities, preventing generational wealth, those were driven by narratives. But the power loss was structural. It was quantifiable.
It wasn't because of a word.
It was lost through policy design, through educational denial, through legal inequality, not because someone used the word kids on a playground.
So this whole word spell narrative is really just a distraction. It moves your energy away from the actual levers of power.
Precisely. They propose this incorrect, simple causation. Word becomes a spell, which causes immediate power loss. It completely overassigns power to language, and that's a profound misdirection from the hard work of actually dismantling the system.
That's a key distinction.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears. We're moving from hidden linguistic traps to hidden cosmic ones. And the fear-based structure, as you said, is identical. Let's talk about that second claim. Jesus is a literal demon feeding on souls, recycling them, and this is the last cycle.
Right. And we need to analyze the structure here. This isn't theology or philosophy or history. What you're looking at is pure cosmic horror mythology.
Cosmic horror, you mean like Lovecraft, where humans are just tiny specks in a hostile universe?
Exactly that. It uses religious figures and icons, but it applies modern sci-fi tropes to them. And when you look at the structure of the narrative, you can see the incoherence right away.
What are the biggest problems with the claims?
They're completely abstract. They're undefined. And they're unfalsifiable. First, they never define what this entity is. Is it energy? A biological being? A metaphor?
Right.
Second, there's no mechanism for the feeding. How does it work? Is it literal, psychological, ritualistic? And third, there's no verifiable source, no historical text, no details about these supposed cycles.
So they're basically inventing a mythology by taking ideas from, say, the Matrix-like energy harvesting and just grafting them onto a major historical figure.
That's the hijack. They take a name everyone recognizes, slap on a terrifying new layer of secret meaning, and then present it as this ancient truth that only they know. It's compelling because it feels like it explains all the world's suffering with one big cosmic conspiracy.
The part of this that I find most alarming is the specific claim, you'll meet Jesus and realize he's a demon. Why is that particular phrase so potent?
Because that is the central lever of psychological coercion. It's an unfalsifiable threat narrative.
You can't prove it wrong.
You can't test it now, can you? So it's designed specifically for scare compliance. The logic is really chilling. If you don't agree with me now, you'll find out the truth when you die, and by then, it'll be too late.
So the goal isn't to enlighten you, it's to get you to obey out of sheer terror.
Exactly. Truth doesn't need terror to be true. A genuinely liberating idea allows you to question it, to be uncertain. A belief that needs the threat of imminent cosmic annihilation to get you on board. Well, that's demanding obedience. It's not revealing truth.
Now, let's be fair. This doesn't come out of nowhere. We have to acknowledge the real historical context. Christianity was used to justify slavery and colonialism. That pain is real, and it makes people search for other answers.
Absolutely. That is a historical fact, and we cannot dismiss it. But here's the crucial nuance. Weaponization is not origin. You can absolutely reject colonial Christianity. You can question doctrine. You can study African and indigenous spiritualities. You can do all of that without needing to invent a demonic cosmology.
So just because a system was abused, that doesn't automatically mean the central figure of that faith is a soul-eating monster.
Exactly. Spiritual maturity allows for that kind of nuance. You don't need to replace one flawed master narrative with a new, infinitely scarier one to feel empowered. Whenever a belief system needs fear of annihilation or it uses deadlines, this is the last cycle, your final chance, that is a huge sign.
A sign of what?
It's a sign that it is demanding obedience, not revealing truth.
This is fantastic. Okay, let's bring it all home for the listener. What is the fundamental shared pattern here? The one connecting words or spells and Jesus is a demon. What is that manipulation engine?
It's a very clear, repeating six-step pattern. A pattern of belief replacement under pressure. Both narratives follow it perfectly.
Okay, lay out step one for them.
Step one, start with real pain or a valid critique. This is the hook. They acknowledge a real problem. Oppression is real. Colonialism was horrific. This builds immediate trust.
Step two, add partial linguistic or historical facts. This gives it that sheen of academic rigor. For the word spells, it's the fact that, yes, a kid is a baby goat. For the cosmology, it might be a real historical critique of the church.
Step three, cross languages improperly or invent hidden meanings. This is where the fantasy starts. The etymology abuse claiming black means white, or taking ancient ideas and imposing a modern sci-fi story on top of them.
Step four, claim secret knowledge or awakening. The I'm awake and you're not factor. The speaker claims to know a hidden truth that everyone else missed, positioning themselves above all other experts and institutions.
Step five, introduce profound existential fear. This is the engine, the fear of lack of being an animal, or the fear of cosmic annihilation and meeting a demon at the end of your life. The stakes have to be terrifying.
And the final piece of the puzzle, step six.
Position the speaker as the awakened guide who has the cure. They are the only one who can lead you out of the trap they just invented or amplified. They're selling you salvation from a fear they just created.
The connection is so clear when you lay it out like that. The subject changes, but the structure is identical. It's a toolkit for belief replacement under pressure, not real awakening.
Exactly. Real empowerment comes from questioning without terror, from critiquing without having to build a new mythology. It's about seeking clarity backed by evidence. You gain agency when you understand the real structural systems of power, not imaginary magical ones.
So the core takeaway for you, the listener, is that when you see these viral claims, check the mechanics. Are they using fear to sell you certainty? Is there proof based on linguistic fantasy? Because if it relies on terror, they're asking for your obedience, not offering you liberation.
And when symbolism replaces evidence, insight turns into illusion.
And here's the final thought for you to chew on. Replacing one master narrative, even a historically flawed one that caused real harm with even scarier one, is not liberation. It's just a different and perhaps tighter cage.
You know that feeling when you hear an idea that sounds so deep, so full of some hidden truth, you feel like it has to be real? Well, today we're going to look at two of those ideas. And on the surface, they seem totally unrelated, but you'll see they actually share a hidden engine. So let's dive in. Okay, so first up, let's look at this claim that the word black is actually a kind of spell. Yeah, a linguistic trap that's literally designed to hold people back. It's a really powerful thought, right? The idea that our own language could be working against us. And then there's the second idea. And this one, whoa, it takes things to a whole other level. The claim here is that major religious figures are actually demons, and that religion itself is just a cosmic system for harvesting souls. I mean, that is a truly terrifying thought. So you've got one idea about words and another about, well, the entire cosmos. On the surface, they couldn't be more different. But here's the thing. They both run on the exact same psychological playbook. And that's the puzzle we're going to piece together today. All right. First things first, let's put these claims about language under the microscope and see what's really going on. We're opening up our first case file, words as weapons. So the core of this first argument is that the word black secretly comes from the French word for white, blanc, or that it means lack. But, when you actually check the history of the word, the etymology, the whole thing kind of falls apart. The English word black actually comes from the Old English black, which just means dark. And yeah, the French word blanc sounds a little similar, but they have totally different roots. This is a textbook example of something linguists call a false cognate. And this is such a key concept, the false cognate fallacy. It's this trap people fall into where just because two words from different languages sound alike, they must be related. But that's not how it works. You can't just grab words from here and there, mash them together, and say you've uncovered some secret meaning. That's not linguistics. It's really just symbolic storytelling dressed up as science. Okay, so what about the next one? The idea that calling children kids is bad because, a kid is a baby goat. And look, it's true, a kid is a baby goat, no one's denying that, but the conclusion that this somehow makes human children act like animals, that is a massive leap in logic. And in fact, if you look at the history of the word, using kid to talk about a child isn't some new secret plot. It's been a normal part of English for over 400 years. Think about it. Words have multiple meanings all the time. That's just how language works. It doesn't mean there's some magical transfer of properties from one meaning to the other. And then there's the last claim in this section, that children actually means cattle. Look, this one is just flat out wrong. There's zero historical connection between these words. Children comes from the Old English word child, which just means offspring. It's a completely invented link that's just designed to sound deep and mysterious. Okay, so it's pretty clear the specific claims about these words are factually incorrect. But, and this is important, they do tap into something that's very real and very powerful, the connection between language and power. So let's separate the metaphor from the actual real-world mechanism. Right, so here's the crucial point. This flawed model suggests that words are like literal magic spells that can just drain your power. But how does it actually work? Well, it's a lot more grounded. You start with a dehumanizing story, a narrative. That narrative leads to harmful beliefs. Those beliefs then shape policy and behavior, and that creates real-world oppressive outcomes. It's a system, not a syllable. Real power, real agency, is lost through very tangible things like economic exclusion, educational denial, unequal laws, and the trauma that gets passed down for generations. It's not lost because somebody called their child a kid. And if you misdiagnose the problem, you end up with solutions that just don't work. Okay, let's switch gears now and open our second case file. This is where we see the manipulation tactics we've been talking about get taken to a whole new extreme. We're moving past bad linguistics and into what our source material calls a cosmology of fear, one that's built around a threat you can never, ever disprove. So this idea that Jesus is secretly a soul-harvesting demon, it is a perfect example of an unfalsifiable threat. I mean, think about it. How could you possibly prove that wrong? The answer is, you can't. It's designed that way. The only proof offered is something you'll supposedly find out after you die, when it's way too late to do anything about it. This is a classic control tactic, and it comes with some huge red flags you should always watch out for. Whenever a belief system's main proof is just fear, you'll find out when it's too late, or when it insists on some apocalyptic deadline and has absolutely no verifiable history or sources. You're not listening to some profound truth, you are listening to the logic of control. And really, this all boils down to a fundamental principle. A genuine search for truth has room for questions, for doubt, for nuance. It doesn't need to scare you into believing with threats of total annihilation. The bottom line is this: Truth does not require terror. Okay, so now it's time to connect the dots. We've looked at these two very different case files, one about words, one about cosmic demons. They seem worlds apart, right? But they are both being powered by the exact same engine of manipulation. And here it is, the manipulation playbook, laid out step by step. And what's wild is that both of these ideas, the words as spells and the demonic Jesus, follow this blueprint perfectly. First, you start with real pain, but blame it on some hidden, secret enemy. Then you claim you have secret knowledge that nobody else does. Next, you redefine common words to create a special insider vocabulary. Then comes the overwhelming fear, you frame all other paths as traps, and finally, you demand belief under pressure. Believe now, or else. So, if that's the playbook for control, what's the alternative? What does real empowerment actually look like? How do we critique things that are genuinely broken without falling for these kinds of manipulation traps? Well, real empowerment, real liberation, is about using a different set of tools. It's about being able to question things without being terrified. It's about critiquing systems using actual evidence, not just made-up mythology. It's about finding a way to heal that doesn't rely on paranoia. At the end of the day, it's about gaining real agency through clarity and useful tools, not through fear. And this quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. It says, "When symbolism replaces evidence, insight turns into illusion." It's so true. The moment we let cool-sounding metaphors stand in for actual proof, what feels like a deep insight is really just an illusion. And that really leaves us with this final crucial thought. It is absolutely necessary to critique and reject systems that are oppressive. But if the alternative you're being offered is just another system built on fear, control, and threats you can't even question, have you really found freedom? Because replacing one master narrative with an even scarier one, that's not liberation, it's just a different cage.